The Red Sea. The scripture says that there were 600,000 men on foot, which came out of Egypt, which means these are men that were of the age to be military ready. They weren't military ready, but they could be made into an army. So you add to that the older men and the women and the children, and you easily come up with about 2 million people that left the land. Now, the scripture says they did not go the easy route. They did not go up the way of the Philistines, which was a established trade route. It was also an Egyptian military route, and it was an easy way to go. God knew that he needed to separate these people from Egypt and not send them the easy way. Or let's put it this way, the easy retreat way. No. These people had a slave mentality. They had spent their entire lives and their parents' lives and going on back being slaves. Everything was given to them, all their food, their water, their jobs were assigned to them. There were slave masters that made sure they did their work and they could sit around and complain about it. No. These people were quick to get discouraged. They were quick to rebel. They did not have any grand thoughts of grandeur or anything like that. They could easily turn around and go back. And the only leaders among them mostly were Egyptians, people who on their own made a decision that it was better to follow the Israelites than to stay with the Egyptians. And so there was a need to separate them out. As we wonder about how long did it take them to get to this point and that, the scripture doesn't actually say, except we can look at their festivals. They had the festival of unleavened bread. First of all, you had the Passover, which of course celebrated when God passed over them. Then the unleavened bread lasted for 7 days after Passover. That was to remember the fact that the Israelites did not have time to have their bread with yeast in it. And so they had to eat unleavened bread, non-yeast bread, for 7 days. And it is generally thought that that's when they arrived at the Red Sea. The next festival that goes in line right here is the Feast of Weeks, also called Pentecost, which was 50 days. It was actually 7 weeks plus a day. And it's generally thought this is when they arrive and receive the law of God. This gives us a little bit of a timetable of how long it took. It says they went to a place, we refer to it as the Red Sea, but the scripture actually said it's the Reed Sea. Interesting thing about this, people looking at history and everything, they don't know where the Reed Sea is at. And those who, for whatever reason, they try to place this up next to the Mediterranean place called Bitter Lake, which was kind of a shallow lake, that this is where they crossed. No, I don't think so, because the Reed Sea in all of history is only mentioned at 2 times. One time when they arrive at the Reed Sea and they cross it, and the other time is in Deuteronomy 21, verse 4. What happened here was that Israel was starting to move after their wilderness wandering, and they came to the Edomites and asked permission to pass through. And they said, no, you can't. If you come here, we will fight you. So Moses turns the people south, and they go down and go by the Reed Sea and come up the other side, and that's around Aqaba. So from this we can tell that the Reed Sea is actually the Gulf of Aqaba. How they got there, there's 2 different theories. mainly because there are two areas in the Reed Sea that have an underwater land bridge. One theory is they went down along the Red Sea until they came to the Strait of Tiran. The other theory is they went along the way of the Philistines just for a ways and then turned and started heading towards Aqaba. But partway down, they turned again, went on down to the Reed Sea at the beach of Nuweiba. This also has an underwater land bridge that goes across. The scripture says that when the people were waiting next to the Reed Sea to cross it, that the Egyptian army came up behind them. And so the cloud that had led to them this place went around to the back of the Israelites. But the part I find interesting, that it was a two-sided cloud. On one side was bright, which provided the Israelites light, because they were going to spend all night long crossing over to the other side. They needed light. But on the other side of the cloud provided darkness. So the Egyptians had no choice but just bed down for the night, because everything was absolutely black. So interesting. It says that an east wind came and blew the water. Now, we always picture, having watched the Ten Commandments, we see two high walls of water with dry land in between. Probably not the way it was, because it says the east wind blew it. And so it's blowing the sea to one side. There was still water on both sides, but most of it was on one side. So that when the Egyptians got there and looked at it, it just looked like land going across with the water far away. And so it was easy for to lure them out and get in the middle. And then God releases the water and it floods back over them. Well, there's so much about this. I trust you'll do some more research and look into all this. But meanwhile, come back next time when we give you more insights on the story.